Welcome to the Not Old Better Show on radio and podcast. The show covering all things health, wellness, culture, and more. The show for all of us who aren't old, we're better. Each week, we'll interview superstars, experts, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things, all related to this wonderful experience of getting better, not just older. Now, here's your host, the award-winning Paul Vogelzang.
Welcome to the Not Old Better Show on radio and podcast. This is the Art of Living series. I'm Paul Vogelzang, and today's episode is for anyone who's ever thought, maybe you can joke your way through life after all. Because our guest today, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist, best-selling author, nationally syndicated humorist, and unofficial king of common sense absurdity, Dave Barry. He's done just that and much more. Yep, that Dave Barry. The man who warned us about exploding toilets, tangled with telemarketers until they stopped answering their own phones, and wrote the kind of newspaper columns that made you snort coffee out of your nose on a Sunday morning. Yeah, I've been there. He's been called the funniest man in America by the New York Times. And in his latest book, Class Clown, he finally turns that razor-sharp wit on himself in a memoir. Today's conversation is a fun one, although, and you can hear this, I was nervous. At one point, during a really just kind of awkward, even roundabout question for me, Dave asks me, I was wondering where you were going with that. I left that in. That's in the edit for your enjoyment. As you all know, I've talked to hundreds of big-time guests over the 10 years that I've been doing this program from all walks of life, like Smithsonian, Prevention Magazine, Good Housekeeping, and so many, many more. I've never been tongue-tied or nervous. Well, not today. That's on me, as Dave Barry is a wonderful guest. He shares with us today what it was like growing up in a world before Wi-Fi, when entertainment meant throwing rocks and preparing for nuclear war in a world that made you hide under your desks. Dave Barry talks with us today about his path from a rock band in the 60s to pages of the Miami Herald, where he turned exploding Pop-Tarts and Rollerblade Barbie into Pulitzer-worthy satire. And yes, he really was almost crushed by a bale of airborne cocaine. Florida, folks. But more than just laughs. Dave opens up about his late parents, his unique upbringing, and the emotional truth behind humor that doesn't always mean happiness. It's a rich, honest, and uproarious reminder that growing older doesn't mean growing dull, and that maybe, just maybe, the class clown gets the last word. So stay with us, because the very funny, very thoughtful Dave Barry is here. This is the Not Old Better Show on radio and podcast, our Art of Living series. Join me as we talk to Dave Barry. Dave Barry, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Paul. Good to be here.
I'm just smiling ear to ear. I get a chance to talk to you. We're going to talk about Class Clown. Thank you for sharing it with me. I got the hardbound edition here. I'm excited to talk about this and Swamp Story and pretty much anything you want to talk about. I'll just kind of be here smiling.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, good. Well, I want to start. I just know everybody starts this way, but you have just had this amazing career, and you're the son of a minister. And I think that's a really good place to start. I know our audience is going to really be so pleased to hear that part of your life. But tell us a little bit about that and the kind of interesting tongue-in-cheek way that you have looking at life, being the son of a Presbyterian minister. I think that's just a great example of your humor.
Well, my dad was Presbyterian minister. He was not a pastor of a church, although when I was growing up, I heard him preach many times. He would be asked to preach at the little town I grew up in, Armonk, New York. He preached at the church there and preached all over New York City. He ran an organization called the New York City Mission Society, which was basically an anti-poverty organization. He was very involved in the civil rights movement. And he was just a general wonderful man. He was very helpful to them. And we had an endless parade of people coming to my dad for help when I was a kid. He was just a great man and a good Christian. What was the interesting thing, like from the humor perspective, is if your dad is a preacher and your dad is a minister. I've talked to many other we call ourselves PKs, preachers' kids.
Yeah.
There's assumptions people make about you, like that you're, the truth is most of us are more rebellious because there were assumptions made about us. But I didn't really have anything to rebel against. My dad was a very, very open-minded person. He had a great sense of humor. He loved to have fun. He liked, they were always having parties, and he and my mom would write songs and, do skits and stuff like that. So I didn't really have anything to rebel against. My dad was just a good, loving dad, and he was a very funny guy, which made my life easier because all I wanted to do was make people laugh. So, if I could make my dad laugh, that made me happy.
Well, thank you for that. I always like to hear good dad stories, and you certainly had a great dad. I know his work was highly valued by so many, and so. My best to you and your family. Congratulations on this wonderful book, Class Clown, a memoir of all of those times. You, in fact, were elected Class Clown. I thought that was a great story, too. Did that just set the stage? Were you already headlong into kind of being a class clown at that point?
Definitely already there. I mean, it was a recognition of the effort I put into making my fellow classmates laugh all through school. I was not good at sports. I was pretty good at school, but I wasn't anything special. And so what I did, I mean, I was the kid who wanted to make the other kids laugh, and I did that all through school. I was a bit of a discipline problems at times. I was told more than once, David, that's very funny, but you can't joke your way through life, which turns out to be not true. I did, in fact, joke my. I'm 77. I'm still doing it, but but by the time I got to high school, Pleasantville High School, Pleasantville, New York, class of 1965, that long ago. In recognition of all this effort I had put into making my classmates and going to detention as a result, I was elected the male class clown of the class of 1960. So I came by that title fair and square, unless somebody wants to challenge the results of that election.
We'll take it. Yeah, I'm 68 and still hard at it. I love what I do. I really enjoy your writing, your new book, Class Clown, your Substack. We'll have links so their audience can find out more about Dave's work, his new book, Class Clown, as well as the Substack work and everywhere that you can find Dave. The book is out on the 13th of May, so just right around the corner for us. And as I say, I'm an older guy, and I didn't grow up with the internet. You didn't either. You talk in the book about, kind of throwing rocks and being out investigating the world. It seems like a pretty good place to be and a pretty good time, and you certainly were motivated and inspired. Would you say that we just have such a different look today to the media that it just is hard to kind of make your way? I think kids have it harder today.
I could not agree more. I speak as a dad and a granddad. I grew up as you did. In a time when kids there was less pressure on them from social forces. I mean, your social world was the kids you knew. There was no social media. You couldn't be victimized by people in Singapore or whatever. You knew who you knew. You knew your friends. You knew your classmates. And also, it was a time when parents, and this has been said over and over again, but it's true. Parents just trusted the kids more, or they were too busy to helicopter over us. So we were sent out into the world pretty early. I grew up in a small town, Armonk, New York, and especially in the summer, we'd disappear, after breakfast and not show up till sundown. And we had our bikes, so we could travel, we could get around, and we knew most of the people in the town. But it was like free range childhood. You went out and you took care of yourself and you amused yourself. You entertained yourself. As you said, I threw a lot of rocks. We did. Not always for good reasons, but and I think kids now, they have so much more in the way of I'm not the word. I'm blanking on the word I'm looking for. It's stimulation. They have so much more. I mean, we had 3 TV stations, and they have about 1 million. We had the Monopoly board, and they have like 9 million electronic devices. They have a lot of stimulation. They don't have as much though independence. They don't have as much self. I think they're not in charge of their own lives to the extent that we were in charge of ours. And I think it's a shame. I think it makes them a little more vulnerable, a little more frail emotionally, and not maybe even physically, but than we were. And I don't think that's a good thing. I mean, I don't know what to do about it because, as I say in the book, I didn't let my kids do half the things that I did when I was a kid. Like we used to hitchhike. That's how we got around. We hitchhiked. Can you imagine today letting a kid do that? No, we would not I would not allow my kids to do that. But I did. I hitchhiked, and it was like, that's how we got around, which, we got to meet people. So I don't know what the solution is. You read I guess there's a very popular book now that basically says you should get your kids off their screens. And I think that's a great idea. I just don't know how you would do it.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I mean, I think, other kids are absolutely contributing to this. My kids contribute to this. It really just builds and swells and gets to be a real challenge. I grew up riding my bike everywhere. I threw a ton of rocks at all kinds of stuff.
It's possible we threw rocks at each other, Paul. We just don't remember.
Dave. we may have. I apologize right up front for that, Dave, too.
Well, I had terrible aim, so I'm sure I never hit you.
You threw some rocks, or over your career, you metaphorically have skewered and thrown some rocks at lots of different industries and states even. You took on my wonderful world of podcasting, and Swamp Stories really gave it to us there pretty good with the character, and that was hilarious, by the way. I loved every second of that. Where did that come from? Because it just seems like there would have been a tendency to have had a very narrow kind of outlook, yet you really find this absurd kind of picture in the world, and I just enjoy it so much. Your writing is just wonderful.
I think I talk about this in my book quite a bit. At the beginning, when I try to figure out where my sense of humor came from, it really was my mom. I mean, my dad was a funny guy. My mom was really funny, but in a very dark, edgy way. My mom suffered from depression. My mom had a rough childhood.
Yeah.
She never ever totally recovered, and ultimately she took her own life, which, so it's going to sound weird when I say this, but she was also the funniest person I ever knew. And she was a wonderful mom. I mean, she didn't inflict her depression on us. We were aware of it, but she didn't take it out on us. And she made a great home for us. But the main thing she did for me, at least in terms of my ultimate life arc, was that she taught me you just don't take anything too seriously. And she never did. She could make fun of anything, anywhere. And that's kind of the view that I took out into the world when I was able to write my own stuff and become a columnist. The grounding in our family, the Barry family, when I grew up, was we did not take ourselves. The last thing you wanted to be in our family was look like a pompous, self-involved person. You were going to get skewered pretty bad if you did that. And we made fun of others who did that. Also, like when I went out in the world, I looked for pomposity or silliness, whatever it was I could make fun of. Yeah. But I did it the way my mom always did it. She would just see, she had a clear-eyed view of how, how weird and strange things could be. And I got that from her. So
we will be right back with our guest, author, humorist, columnist extraordinaire, Dave Barry. Dave Barry reminds us that humor isn't just a distraction. It's a survival skill. From duck and cover drills to Pulitzer Prizes, from exploding Pop-Tarts to emotional truth, Dave has shown that growing older doesn't mean getting quieter. If anything, it means getting funnier. bolder, and more willing to call out life's absurdities with a grin. So stay with us. We've got a lot more coming up with Dave Barry. Hi, this is Paul. Before we jump back into today's show, I want to take a moment to recognize a truly special milestone, Smithsonian Associates' 60th anniversary. Since 1965, Smithsonian Associates, the largest museum-based education program in the world, has been inspiring lifelong learners with unforgettable experiences, connecting audiences with the Smithsonian's museums, research, and experts in new and exciting ways. This year, the celebration is for you, with a full year of special programming both online and in person, from behind-the-scenes looks at Smithsonian collections to conversations with astronauts, historians, filmmakers, and curators. There's something for everyone. Smithsonian Associates has created something extraordinary. I'm proud to partner with Smithsonian Associates to share their incredible programs with the Not All Better Show audience. Thanks for being part of this journey. Here's to 60 years of curiosity, learning, and discovery. Dave Barry's our guest today. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. I have laughed at your work for a long, long time. You poke fun at yourself too, and so that self-deprecate, that's always such a wonderful way of kind of bringing, at least me, and I know you're so popular in terms of this area. You learned early to do that. That came from early writing assignments.
Again, both my parents,
Yeah.
they were Midwesterners. They were like, again, you didn't put on airs, you didn't toot your own horn, and like you're right. But my persona in writing my columns over the years was always like, I'm an idiot. And I think part of the appeal of that, I was writing in newspapers for the most of my life. My column ran in a whole lot of newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
And people, when they read the newspaper, they're very used to this voice of authority. The newspaper, whoever's writing the newspaper story is the authority and telling you what is true, or as a columnist who's telling you what you should think and whatever. And so I took the voice of like, I'm in the newspaper and I'm completely wrong about everything. It's like, I think it was like, people like that. You're like, okay, you're not so great at that newspaper. You're not, you don't know that much. And I always felt it's like a lot easier to make fun of me. I feel safer making fun of me than making fun of anybody else anyway. It's fair. So,
yeah, the Miami Herald, from I think it was 88 to 2005, newspapers before that too. So you think about journalism today, and you really have spanned this enormous period of time. The changes are huge. You have this wonderful Substack that I'm a subscriber to. We'll put links so the audience can find it. Yeah, of course, it's fantastic too. I really enjoyed the Florida piece about the influencers.
The yacht with 32 influencers aboard. We almost lost 32 social media influencers. What a tragedy! What
would have happened?
What would we have done without people influencing?
I don't know. I mean, especially yacht influencers or Miami Beach. That's a real need. And Miami, Florida takes it on the chin once in a while from you. And
a lot.
A lot.
No, Miami is, I live in Miami. I've lived here almost 40 years now. I moved here because the Miami Herald hired me in 1983. I moved down here in 1986. So I've written a lot about Miami. It is a very weird, strange city. And it's like, my joke is I moved here in 1986 from the United States. It's not really the United States. We do use American money. Sometimes we speak English, but not very much. And like everybody here is driving according to the law of a different country. And the things just happen here. So I've written a number of novels that are all always set in South Florida. And the things that I write about in those novels, people go, where do you get these ideas? I get them out of the newspaper. The stories I'm writing about, are based on things that actually happen here, which are weird. It's a weird place, but it's never boring. So I love it here. It's a little scary to people who, have come for the first time because it doesn't seem like a regular place. But once you get to know it, you can love it.
The Memoir Class Clown is so wonderful. Swamp Story is one of my favorites too. I just gotta say it to our audience. If you have not read it, check out Swamp Story because it is fantastic. Some of those characters, some of those South Florida characters are so rich in detail. The Bortle family comes to mind, but I mean, there are so many. You had to have a good time writing Swamp Story, I'll bet.
I did, and that was sort of inspired by. I wrote a book, maybe more than 10 years ago. It was called Best State Ever, and it was about Florida. And I was defending the state of Florida. My joke is like, Florida. People think Florida's crazy, but why should we judge? There are 23 million people here. Is it fair to judge 23 million people just because of the actions of 21 million people? So we're a crazy state. But anyway, I did this. So I did this book, and in the book, I basically just went around to tourist attractions, but not big new ones like Disney World. I did the old school, the sketchy roadside tourist attractions that used to be such a part of the Florida experience. And there's still some there on the back roads, hanging on, trying to, survive. And one of them that I went to was called the Skunk Ape Research Headquarters, which is on the Tamiami Trail, Route 41 between Miami and Tampa.
Oh,
And
my God.
the skunk ape is like the Yeti. It's like this thing in the supposed to be out in the Everglades, and I don't really think it's real on a lot, but there are people who claim to have seen it, and there's this guy, and I spent a day with him who's got the Skunk Ape Research Headquarters, which is basically what they do is they sell T-shirts. So that's the research. Anyway, I just loved that whole thing, the Everglades, because the Everglades is this. It's not just a swamp. I mean, there are people there more than you might think. There are little settlements back in there, but they're all there for a reason. There's a reason they don't want to be around Miami and around civilization. They want to be out there in the swamp where the mosquitoes and the alligators and the snakes. And it's just a whole different environment. And I thought this would be a wonderful place to set a book. And that was where the whole idea for Swamp Story began. The Bortle brothers that you mentioned, that's based directly on the Skunk Ape Research Headquarters. In fact, their goal is these guys is to have a tourist attraction as good as the Skunk Ape Research Headquarters. That's their ambition.
Yeah, they're hilarious. I literally it is laugh out. You hear this phrase a lot. It is laugh out loud funny. And Dave Barry, the writing is just fantastic. Class Clown is so good too. There are some serious moments. You talk a little bit about, your mom, you talk about your dad. Has humor always been kind of your device, your tool to kind of make your way through some of those tougher moments? Because it's a great one. I think it's a lot. We don't have enough humor right now, Dave Barry.
I agree. First, about my dad, and I'll just say, I already said my mom took her own life, and my dad, who was a wonderful guy, he was a great dad, became an alcoholic or fell into alcoholism in his late 40s, early 50s, and he recovered. We went through a couple rough years as a family, particularly my mom, but he recovered and became very active in Alcoholics Anonymous, and because that's the kind of person he was, he would take whatever he had to deal with and turn it into a way to help other people. And he helped a whole lot of people who had problems with alcoholism. He was a wonderful mentor. But he did have that issue. My mom did have her depression. So both my parents had issues. But I was like, I can't stress enough, they didn't inflict those on us. We had a great childhood, and humor was such a huge part of it. I still believe, as you say, humor is like there are two main weapons that we use. I think this is going to be me getting kind of, I don't know, trying to sound like an authority. Two main weapons that people use to deal with the world, because the world is scary. You think about it, like you don't know what's going to happen to you. You know that you're ultimately going to die, which is scary. And along the way, you don't have a whole lot of control. Things keep happening all around us, and that we have no control over. And there are basically two ways we respond to that. I think one is religion. People believe that there's there's ultimately a meaning to it, and that it isn't just going to end. And the other is humor. While you're going through it, it's kind of a reaction. A lot of the best humor comes out of the worst things. This is something that no other animal does because they don't know they're going to die. But we do, and so we have to deal with it somehow. And so we developed this humor. This is my theory anyway. and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah.
And that's how people are able to get through their lives. If you look at really brutal repressive regimes like the Soviet Union in the back in the 50s, it was famous for like jokes. They were dark jokes, but they had them, because you got to do something to get through. So I think it's like it's not just an entertainment humor. It's like a vital part of your psyche, and you should encourage yourself to be able to laugh at things. And I feel really bad for people who can't, because there are people who just don't feel they have permission to find anything funny. The world is bad. There are bad things happening. Therefore, I'm always going to be serious. I am never going to laugh at anything. And believe me, if you write humor for a living as I do, you hear from people like that all the time. How dare you, laugh? How dare you make fun? And I'm thinking because we need to, because we have to. Doesn't mean there aren't problems, and it doesn't mean people shouldn't deal with the problems, but we need to be able to laugh, or we're going to be just crazy. I know that sounded like a sermon.
No,
that's my view on humor developed over the years.
I appreciate. I know our audience will relate, and so many do. That your popularity has just been, I think a result of all of that humor and all of that touching commentary, and your, your writing, your years as a journalist, all of these fantastic books. I mean, it pales in comparison to being on stage with Bruce Springsteen. How about that for a second? Would you agree?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree.
Okay.
What
Sorry, I didn't
to,
mean to set it up quite that way.
No, that's
writing.
I didn't know where you were going, but I'm glad
I was a little twisted there. Apologies.
You got there. But as you can see over my shoulder here, there's a guitar. I play guitar. I don't play well, but I'm in a. I played guitar and rock bands in college, all through college, and the great joy, my great hobby as an older person has been playing in a band called the Rock Bottom Remainders, which was a band that was formed in 1992, and it was going to only play for one night. Probably only should have played for one night, but we kept together, and it's got some pretty good authors in it. Stephen King is in this band. Amy Tan is in this band. Mitch Albom, Roy Blunt Jr., Scott Turow, Ridley Pearson, Greg Iles. A lot of good authors. Alan Zweibel, Mary Carr. These are terrific authors, but we're not necessarily good musicians. We play. Roy Blunt Jr. described our genre as hard listening music, and I think that's pretty fair. But I can't remember when. Back in the 1990s, we were playing at some bookseller event. That's our key demographic audience is booksellers who have been drinking, ideally. As the old joke goes, the more you drink, the better we sound. And somehow somebody in the band was connected with somebody who knew Bruce Springsteen. So we're in LA doing this show, and we're getting near the end of it. And who walks out onto the stage to be in our band but Bruce Springsteen, the boss? And he comes up to me, and first of all, I give him my guitar immediately because I want to be able to, for the rest of my life, be able to say Bruce Springsteen played my guitar. Not this one, but I have a guitar that Bruce Springsteen played. But more than that, I had to talk to him about our last song. The last song we were going to do was Gloria, which is, Glori,
Love that song.
It's a garage band rocker. Very simple song. If you take a guitar and throw it on the ground, it will play Gloria. So, but I had to say to Bruce Springsteen, Bruce, do you know Gloria? Fortunately, he did. He was able to handle it. So we did that song, but now I sing lead on that song. So we're doing the song, and I'm singing Glori, and Bruce Springsteen, among others, is going Gloria. So the point I'm making here is Bruce Springsteen sang back up to me. And that was unquestionably the highlight of my life. I don't think I'll ever be able to top that.
That's amazing. That's a wonderful story. Well, Dave Barry, last question for you. So many in our audience, me included, this is kind of a second act for me. And so many, I think, as we get a little older, we do want to maybe do something differently. Perhaps it's family related. Perhaps it's business related. Perhaps there's great creativity. And so I wonder if you just give us some advice. is creativity lost on the aging, those of us? Is it just something that the young possess and that we'll never find it? How do you see this, and what advice would you give those members of our audience who want to achieve something different and do so creatively?
Go for it. I mean, what else are you going to do? You're not getting another life after this one. Go. Well, at least I don't think you are. Go for it. I started writing a Substack this year. I'm 77 years old, and I decided to go ahead.
It's wonderful, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Really great stuff.
But I hadn't written columns in a long, long time. And I've been writing books and occasionally an essay. I thought, you know what? I really got some stuff I'm going to do it. And, it's been great. It has worked out really well. I don't know that there's ever a time when you stop being able to do those things. I think what happens is people think, well, I'm too old for that. You're not too old. There's probably some things you're too old for. You're probably too old to be wearing really tight jeans. But I mean, but that does anything involving your brain, what you want to do, what you want to try. What's the worst that can happen? You fail. So what? At least you tried. So go for it. That's my advice to everybody my age, and I'm old.
Well, you're funny, and such a pleasure to speak with. Congratulations on this wonderful book. Of course, Class Clown is the name of Dave Barry's new book. We'll have links to Dave's Substack. We'll have links to all of Dave's material, including the new book. I know there's a book tour coming up. I know you're going to be all over the country talking about the book. We're just so grateful for your generous time today, Dave. Good luck with all of this stuff, and as you write more, please come back, because I'll welcome it, and I know our audience will. But thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been great being on your show. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for spending time with us today on the Not Old Better Show Art of Living interview series. I'm Paul Vogelzang. Dave Barry, humorist, has been our guest. We're going to have links to all of Dave Barry's work, including his new book, Class Clown, which you are just going to love. If you enjoyed our conversation with Dave Barry, I'm sure you have. How could you not? Be sure to check out his memoir, Class Clown, available now wherever you get your books. To listen to today's full interview and explore our entire catalog of stories that inspire, amuse, and empower those of us over age 60, head to notold-better.com. Follow us online on Twitter @NotOldBetter and on Instagram @NotOldBetter. for behind-the-scenes moments, episode extras, and upcoming guest announcements. This show is a proud production of NOBS Studios. Be well, be safe. Let's talk about better. The Not Old Better Show, I'm Paul Vogelzang. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next time.